Hi, my name is Summer and I am an alcoholic. Welcome to our Big Book Compendium Friday night study. The spiritual life is not a theory. Before we begin, I would love to introduce Ian S. to you. He was on some of the meetings that I was on, and he has a wonderful story and great shares. And I believe that it will be awesome tonight with us breaking down Bill's story. Ian, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your home group or?
Sure. My name is, as you said, I'm Ian S. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I'm very happy to be here. I don't know if I really have a home group exactly, but I think the meeting to which you're referring is I'm a regular contributor at a group called TGIF and the Midnight Rounders. That's at midnight Eastern time every Friday night, midnight Eastern time, and it's an open meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. It's very good. We proceed in an orderly, solution-focused way. To help connect the addict who still suffers with people who can help them. And that's what I'm here to do with you tonight. And I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Ian. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are on page 1 of Bill's story. All right, and let's just dive right into it. War fever ran high in the New England town to watch. We knew young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. Here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last, and in the midst of the excitement, discovered liquor. I discovered liquor. I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. In time, we sailed for over there. I was very lonely and again turned to alcohol. All right, Ian, do you have anything to comment on this?
Over there, in case anybody doesn't know, that means Europe. And when he talks about the strong warnings and prejudices of his people concerning drink, he's referring to hereditary factors. Bill had family members who were alcoholics, and he'd been warned by his family against drinking. I received the same warnings, and I did exactly the same thing that Bill did with them, which is I ignored them. I often think about this because, I have a son of my own. Many of us who are recovered have children, and we sometimes think that just by giving strong warnings to them concerning drink, we can spare them from the necessity to have the kind of spiritual experience that we had to avoid the troubles that we had. Well, it didn't work for Bill and it didn't work for me. Maybe it'll work for some of you, but that's all I really have to say about this paragraph. Is that's what he's talking about.
All right, thank you so much. I also see like where Bill is talking. He said, here was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious." Like a little bit about Bill is he's pretty. He did have his abandonment issues from the past, like from when he was a child, but he always overcompensated and always was using self to get things. Like I love how he writes applause, like that's ego. But he in the midst of the excitement, he discovered liquor. He forgot the strong warnings, and that too, just like Ian said, like people warned me, but it never worked. It never worked. There had to be a message with depth and weight for me to really receive any sort of direction.
Yeah,
And
and
I
it
believe.
still won't work, right? That's the thing is that even now today, it's not warnings about alcohol or prejudices against alcohol that keep me in a recovered state. It's an ongoing growth and maintenance of a spiritual experience. That's why I think it's such a waste of time to tell people boring war stories about the troubles that drinking can get you into. I already knew the troubles drinking could get me into, and I found I couldn't stop drinking even when I really wanted to, right? So what do I need to hear about, more warnings and more prejudices about drink? I need a real solution, and that's what Bill's eventually going to need too.
All right, thank you, Ian. Beautiful. All right, back to the book. We're still on page 1. We landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is never forgot, whether he dieth by musket or by pot. Now, Ian, do you have anything to comment? Is pot the marijuana? I'm
No,
just kidding.
I suppose you could die that way too. No, he means a pot of beer,
Yeah.
a pot of beer. And this is a real tombstone. He has misremembered the inscription. It really does exist at Winchester Cathedral. You can go look at it. But the inscription is somewhat different. And what that tells me is that Bill is writing this probably from memory. And he had, as he'll talk about later in the chapter, he has a very moving experience at Winchester Cathedral, right? And he doesn't say much about what happens to him there, but he has some kind of short-lived spiritual experience. The problem that he has is that that feeling goes away. He can't sustain the spiritual experience. He doesn't have a toolkit to stay connected to God or any sort of higher power. And so eventually, of course, he gets himself into all the trouble that he gets into. But he has this short-lived spiritual experience at Winchester Cathedral, but he can't hold on to it.
Wonderful. I have nothing else to say. That was perfect. Thank you. Ominous warning, which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation? My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises, which I would manage with the utmost assurance. So notice in this paragraph, the eyes, the eyes, the eyes. I wish I would manage. I imagine, I fancied himself as a leader. Like I said, to go back in history about exactly what Bill was like growing up and all that, that's a side thing that we can do another time. But this is what's expected. It was all about ego and pride. And do you have anything to say?
I agree with
Mhm.
what you're gesturing at, which is he's painting the portrait of a person who is really running on self-propulsion, right? As we'll
Mm.
discuss much later in the study, he is in the early stages of the delusion that he can wrest satisfaction out of this life if only he can manage it well, and he thinks he will be able to manage it well. And it's not because he's not a not capable guy that he ends up being wrong about that. But the truth is that none of us running on self-propulsion can have a very successful life. And so he's young, and so he doesn't know that yet, but he's going to learn a lesson about that as we move down the road.
Thank you. All right. Be on the next page, 2. I took a night law class and obtained employment as investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd proved to the world I was important. My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little, I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophical thought were so derived. Ian?
Yeah, I bet, right? I think we've probably all given concerned partners or friends some version of that lecture. But I actually want to draw your attention to the middle part of that paragraph where he talks about potential alcoholic that I was. I nearly failed my law course. He says he was too drunk to think or write. I think this is the first indication that we get that even at this early stage, Bill is having trouble controlling the amount that he drinks once he starts. We call this the phenomenon of craving, in the doctor's opinion, because I find it difficult to believe, and it certainly doesn't seem like it would be the case, that he set out to get so drunk before he took his law course, before he took his law exam, that he would be so drunk that he couldn't think or write. No, he probably thought, I'll have one drink to relax, right? Just get my nerves down. And then he couldn't stop at one. And so by the time the exam rolls around, he is so drunk that he can't think or write. And so this is way before he's even going to make an attempt to stop, right? But already he's showing the first of the 2 symptoms of alcoholism, which is he cannot drink safely. Right. And he's going to discover that there's another symptom later on, too. But already we see that he doesn't drink like other people. And neither do I. This was my experience. I actually also was drunk for the bar exam because I'm a lawyer, too. I wasn't so drunk I couldn't think or write, but I know the feeling.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Back to the book, middle of the paragraph. I'm sorry, middle of the page, second paragraph. By the time I had completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that one day would turn its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000. It went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have a great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyways. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. All right, Ian.
Well, again, we see the same delusion I was talking about earlier. He thinks that the reason people lose money in stocks, the reason people don't get what they want in life, is because they don't manage well. He'll be able to manage well, and so he'll be able to get satisfaction out of life. But he says he'll discover many more reasons that people don't get what they want out of life later on, right? So I think it's the same thing. We're just sort of setting up. This is the personality of a person who is really running on self-propulsion. That's what these early couple of pages set out. And if a person's listening to this and thinking, for example, they've never taken a night law course and they never did any Wall Street speculation and they never fought in World War I, so what does this story have to do with me? That's a fair thought, but ask yourself, have you ever had thoughts like these kind of self-propulsive thoughts, right? Have you ever thought that you could get satisfaction out of life if you managed well and if you got everybody to do what they were supposed to do? Have you ever had those kind of feelings? Because if you do, then you're a lot more like Bill, because you're a person, right? And Bill is writing here really about the human condition. Then you're a lot more like it than you might think.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, when reading Bill's story, the identification seems to be one of the most important parts. But I was taught through sponsorship some things that we need to like say to ourselves when we're reading Bill's story or any personal story, maybe in the back of the book, is did I think like Bill? Did I feel like Bill? Or did I drink like Bill? And those are things for identification purposes to see if we relate. A lot of people, when they find, like you were saying, Ian, like there's certain things that we won't identify with in this book, but that doesn't make it, not that there's so many things that we can identify with the feelings, the drinking, the thinking, I should say. And do we identify with him in that? And once I changed the mindset there, once the mindset was changed, I was able to really relate to Bill. And I like how it says, the inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were like my heroes. I believe that we all are born with like a God-shaped or higher power void. And look, it's so pretty clear that he had Wall Street. I mean, it's in capitals, but I know it already is in capitals, but Wall Street is this big thing for him. It had him in a grip. It had him. And, the people that were involved with Wall Street were his heroes. And so that can temporarily fit into that void if we don't have something else that is bigger and better and is above the higher power. That's not possible. But in our lives, when we're back, in our drinking or using, we put everything in front of a higher power, or I did, at least. I'm going to say I did. And I found ways to temporarily fill that void in me. Maybe it would have been doing stocks and being on Wall Street. I don't know. I found other ways, but I really relate when he says things like this, that he, it had him in his grip, and the people that he looked up to were his heroes. And those were part of that grip that he had.
Absolutely. Yeah, you could tell there's a worship here, a worship of these business and financial leaders, a worship of Wall Street and money. Bill's obsessed with money. That's another thing that comes out in this story. He's obsessed with money. But notice that for all of his worship of it and all of his worship of these people, these are human things. And so they do not give him, even in his pursuit of them, access to a power that is enough to deal with the alcoholism that he'll come to undo all of this career success down the line, right? It's only when he finds a power that is greater than human power that he's going to be able to solve those problems. But you're right. He worships, exactly. He has made money in Wall Street his higher power. But the problem is that those things, being human beings and human creations, just don't connect into the good stuff. It's not going to enable him to really solve his problem at all.
Mhm. Thank you, Ian. All right. By the time I had completed the course, I knew sorry, I can't see, I have so much stuff in here. The law was not for me. Oh, I already wrote this
I
paragraph.
think you did this paragraph. We just did this paragraph.
Okay, sorry. Thank
All
you.
right.
What would I do without you? Okay. We gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle. The sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Perhaps they were right. I had had some success at speculation, so we had a little money, but we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. At the end of it, my reports to Wall Street procured me a position there and the use of a large expense account. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. All right, I'll let you go, Ian.
Well, I think it's interesting. One thing I have underlined in this chapter is this joking reference to a lunacy commission. The analogy of insanity is going to be used several times in this chapter. It's some version of insanity or lunacy or something like that appears on pages 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, 14, and 15 of this chapter, because it's not talking about drinking here, but usually when that term comes up, we're talking about the insane thoughts of the alcoholic mind with respect to the first drink, or if an addict of another sort, then the first drug or first acting out behavior or whatever. Over and over, if you pay attention in this book, the idea of insanity. We have an insane mind, but only with respect to this one specific subject, right? I'm completely sane in every other respect, except my thinking around the first drink, which leads to the spree, is insane. So this is the first time it comes up, but it comes up over and over. And if you pay attention, Bill will come to realize quite soon when he wants to stop drinking and discovers that he can't, he will regard this, I think correctly, as a form of insanity. And this is the first time this idea is introduced, although, obviously making a joking reference here, but it'll come up again later.
Thank you so much. All right. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part in my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends. All right, Ian.
Well, just note, he says, at this point, he says, drink is taking an important and exhilarating part in his life. And he's going to talk more in the next paragraph about it, assuming more serious proportions. We're getting here a thumbnail sketch of his drinking to this point. He discovers liquor, right, as a young man about to head off to Europe. And it gradually takes on, it's not continuous when he's taking his law course. Now he's got a little money, and so he can afford it. And so he's starting to drink more frequently. And we've still got no indication, of course, that he's able to control the amount that he drinks. We can sort of see this because, again, if the phenomenon of craving and if the phenomenon of alcoholism in general is progressive, and it is progressive, that it'll start off in one place and then it'll get worse as time goes on. And just in case, by the way, anybody doesn't know, what fair weather friends means is it's a sort of old-timey phrase. People probably know it, but if you don't, what that means is people who are only your friends when things are going good. Right, when the weather is fair, right, but aren't there for you in the stormy times. So Bill makes a bunch of those people who aren't going to be around later on, and so did I.
Thank you. Yeah, reading this one sentence, I had arrived. It's a short one. It reminds me of when he says, I was part of life at last, like I'm finally there. And you know what had him arrive? What has, initiated this arrival is the fortune and applause that came his way,
Right.
So, and then he says, I had arrived. But I mean, how many times did I think in my life, like, this is it. This is it. This will be my answer. And then slowly but surely, I went right back to like my old ways without having the spiritual toolkit, like Ian had said, without having that the spirituality, the toolkit, this program, I always had arrived, but then went back somewhere else, out. And so I relate to that a lot. It was part of life at last. I was part of life at last. And for scoffers are mockers, correct? Mockers,
Yeah, exactly. Somebody exactly. It's or the haters. The haters
haters.
could hate and be damned, right? That's what it'd be.
Yes. Yes. And someone told me that fair weathered friends are like Kleenex. You blow your nose into them and then you throw them away. Like that's how the fair weathered friends, they're good for a time until you blow your nose and things get bad and then it gets thrown away. So they come and
Absolutely.
go in life.
Totally.
All right. We're on the last paragraph of page 3. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances, I don't know.
This
Sorry.
is the hell of a sentence that you've got here. So enjoy this one.
Okay. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife helped at times, but extreme drunkenness kept me out of those scrapes.
What a
Okay.
what a paragraph, right? Why don't you how does this last this thing where Bill essentially says that because he was too drunk to cheat on his wife, how does that grab you?
Yeah,
Not great.
not great.
We don't have to love that part, right?
Right. Right. And I mean, loyalty to his wife. I bet you that was a little bit less than the other one, the extreme drunkenness that kept him out of infidelity.
I would think.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to comment on?
Yeah, well, what I would say is that sentence about the, what he means by this, a row is a fight. What he's saying is that like his friends were telling him to knock it off and they got into a fight and he told them to basically go to hell, right? I had experiences like this myself where people were like, you don't really, you don't handle, they didn't put it like this, but you don't handle liquor like other people, right? You think you maybe might want to, ease off a little bit. And of course, I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And so I, tell him to, go buzz off, right? That's what Bill's talking about. There, people around him are saying, you think you might have a problem? And he's saying, yeah, my problem is you, motherfucker, get out of here. That's what he's really saying. And so that's what that is now it's starting to become his, he says continuing all day and almost every night. So now his drinking is becoming not just uncontrolled when he drinks, but he's drinking more frequently. Right. And you put those two together and it's going to be, well, there's going to be a lot of unhappy scenes in his nice apartment. Right. Absolutely. There are.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. All right. In 1929, I contracted golf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started out to overtake Walter Hagen. Okay. Liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to carom around the exclusive course, which had inspired such awe in me as a lad. I acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. All right, here we go. It's getting worse. What do you have to say, Ian?
It is getting worse. And what he's starting to do is he's starting to build his life and his leisure activities around his drinking. I can relate to that a great deal. Now, I don't play golf much myself, but I certainly did when I was drinking, structure a lot of my activities, my social life, my friends, the things I liked to go do and the things I didn't like to go do were subtly, right? Often in subtle ways, selected by like, if you have an open bar at your event, I was a lot more likely to come to your wedding reception or whatever. If you were the kind of person who liked to go out to like bars and clubs at night, we were more likely to become friends because I'm starting to build my consumption of liquor into my personality. right? And that's what Bill's doing. It's like he's not any good at golf, and he knows he's not really going to get good at golf. But what it permits is drink. And I know lots of guys like this. It permits drinking all the time. It sort of normalizes it, right? So again, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't play very much golf. Well, but have you structured your life so that drinking or substance use or acting out behaviors can be sort of normalized into the structure of your existence? And I think for a lot of people, that's going to be answer to that is going to be yes, right? And Bill's doing the same thing here. He knows he can't control the amount that he drinks. He knows he doesn't drink like a normal person. So maybe he can make the amount that he drinks normal for him by building a life where it looks normal, right? He's going to try that. That's a strategy many of us try. And we'll see how it goes.
Yes, I can definitely relate to that as well. I ended up, working at a resort that's overseas because they allowed us to drink at night with the customers, and that was our job. So I was like, sign me up. That's where
Totally.
I'm going. Yeah. So yeah, we start to build our life around our addiction or alcohol, and that's where it starts to get bad fast, I feel like.
Totally.
All right. So abruptly in October 1929, this next page on page 4, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from a hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of the tape which bore the inscription XYZ-30. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were my friends. The paper reported men jumping to death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow was another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. All right, Ian.
What a rich paragraph this is. And I think there's something I really identify with a lot in this paragraph, and something really important I think to notice is Bill's not drinking for no reason. Alcohol is his solution, and it's a solution that's working for him, right? This is the Great Depression, right? This is Black Friday on the stock market or whatever. And other of his friends who don't have any kind of coping mechanism or anything, they're jumping to their deaths, or they're just falling into depression. But Bill knows that he can use alcohol to get that certain feeling back, that fierce determination to win, as he says. He's not going to jump, right? He's going to go back to the bar where he knows that he can find courage and determination and even a kind of optimism about the future, right? And this is really important to understand, because if we didn't get these effects from alcohol or drugs or whatever it is that's killing us, we wouldn't do these things, right? And what that means is that we're going to need to find, when we find a solution, yeah, we need to turn off the drugs, the alcohol, whatever. Of course we need to do that, right? But when we need to find for real is a solution that makes us feel like this, right? We need a source of this in our life. We need something where when we have a Black Friday of our own, where is going to be our fierce determination to win going to come from, right? Where is our source of optimism and hope and courage going to be? If it's not going to be alcohol, it better be something, right? And it better be, that's what this book is all about, is finding a power that can give you that is more powerful even than alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. But there's a lot going on in this paragraph, because this is how alcohol is working still for now as Bill's solution. It's not going to stay working for that much longer. But I think there's, if you've ever felt like this, if you've ever used alcohol and drugs to give you this feeling that Bill is getting, you're not alone. And there is a solution on offer that can give you those feelings and more without all the stuff about drugs and alcohol that are killing you, right? Absolutely there is.
Yeah, and how many times have we, been like, all right, I'll just start tomorrow. Tomorrow is another day. I'll start over tomorrow, in the midst of us picking up or doing something, acting out. I'll just, instead of being today, we can start our day over and start right now. I'd be like, tomorrow I'll start this. I'll start my no alcohol or my no, eating bad food. I'll start that tomorrow. I also like as I drink, the old fierce determination. I was getting to that at the beginning, but I couldn't think of the right words. With Bill, when he was a child, he wasn't he was kind of a bit lanky and not the most athletic, but he was self-determined, and he was the captain of 2 teams, in sports that he doesn't even know. He learned to play instruments when he didn't even, never he taught himself, and, his grandfather was part of that, but I mean, that's determination. And, you know, as I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. So here he is in that determination again of self. Self can do this. I can get out of this. That's all self for him.
Right, absolutely. And eventually, we're going to hit a point where, the alcohol or the drugs or whatever it is no longer give us this feeling. Right. And that's when most of us really start to face a pretty bleak period. And we start to ask questions like, is there anything that can give us that fierce determination to win? Is there any way to access this feeling of optimism and hope and a sense that sort of I can do it? And the answer is, of course, yes. That this book, this program of spiritual action is all about finding a power that gives us that feeling in a totally new way, oriented toward totally new ends, right? Not our own selfish ends, but service to our fellow human beings and to God as we understand God. But yeah, absolutely. Many of us, certainly, I can certainly identify with this. Trying to get that feeling, right? That good, fierce determination. I can do this. I can do this. And as matters get worse in our lives, often because of the very things that we're doing, right, in our addictions, we might have to go to that feeling, that well of that feeling over and over. And eventually it sort of runs out if we can't find a more durable source by which we can live.
Thank you, Ian. All right. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I had better go to Canada. By the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No, St. Helena for me. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time, we stayed broke. I'm going to read one more paragraph. We went to live with my wife's parents. I found a job, then lost it as the result of a brawl with a taxi driver. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years, or hardly drew a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. One more, sorry. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3, got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I would pay my bills at the bars and delicatessens. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation, and there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hope.
Yeah.
Go right ahead, Ian.
All right. Well, a couple of things to notice here. First, Bill tries a couple of times what you might call a geographic cure. Let's take a trip, right? I need to just get out of here and move to someplace new. Let's move to Canada, right? Or let's move and live with my wife's parents. People have tried this kind of thing since the invention of alcoholism, and it always ends up just about like this, because wherever I go, I'm still me, and I take the symptoms of alcoholism, including my alcoholic mind, most importantly, with me, right? So it never works. Sometimes it gives us a couple of weeks where we feel hopeful, and that's fine, but then we always remain ourselves until we can get access to a real solution. The other thing to notice is he is still not yet had his first step experience completed here, because he still thinks, despite how bad it's getting, right? Now, he's started to wake up in the morning with the jitters, right? That's what he means by a tumbler full of gin, followed by half a dozen bottles of beer are required if he's going to eat any breakfast. He's waking up with alcohol withdrawals, right? He's become physically dependent on it. But even this, at this point, he still thinks I got this. I just got to try harder. Right? I can control the situation. And for intermittent periods, right? These periods of sobriety, he can do it. I'm going to guess if he's anything like me, those periods tended to get shorter and shorter as time passed, right? Maybe I can do it for a few weeks here, maybe only a couple of weeks there. Maybe now it's just a long weekend that renews the hope of his wife, because his wife, of course, is a normal, person, right? She's a normal temperate drinker. I mean, she's got her own issues. All of us have our own issues, but she doesn't drink like Bill. And so she thinks maybe he's sort of asserting his power of will, right? Not understanding. And of course, Bill himself doesn't really understand that his power of will doesn't work in the normal way, not on this one specific thing. So I mean, it's interesting. We can go quite far down the scale, still thinking, I got this if only I try harder. I can wrest satisfaction and sobriety out of this life if only I manage well. Bill is still in the grip of that delusion. It won't last that much longer.
Yeah. And he has no idea that our mind doesn't remember that we have an allergy to alcohol. He knows none of that. Like, so he just keeps trying to control and like control. It doesn't even have, for most of us, it doesn't have to look exactly like Bill. Like a desire, we still think we could control thing. It could be denial or something more subtle than like, I can control this. But this still brings us back to there needs to be a message of depth and weight, and there needs to be something that's a power that's greater than the power we're using, which for me was alcohol and drugs. That was a really high power for me. I have to find something bigger than that. It was a great solution for a very long time, very long, until it stopped being a solution and then it was not. So yeah, I think that control can look like a whole bunch of different things, but anything that we're putting above the highest power is showing that we're trying to exert our ego comes up, pops back up, and it goes down and then pops up in a different way. So, the ego likes to reassert itself in the most darndest ways is what I want to say. It comes out and reasserts, and I'm unexpecting or we're unexpecting, but it's there and it dresses up in different ways. I don't know why I went on that tangent, but we're going to keep going. Okay.
It's a good point, but let's keep going. But I think it's an excellent point.
Okay. Gradually things got worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at the low point of 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and that chance vanished. That's some self-sabotage right there. What do you have to say, Ian?
Well, it certainly is. I mean, and look, this is a demonstration that here are some things that don't cure alcoholism. First of all, bad consequences, right? Losing your house, death in the family, your wife, your father-in-law becoming ill. These they may wake you up, they may alert you to the need for a solution to alcoholism or addiction, but they are not solutions to that. You can't just say like, once my house got taken, that's when it all turned around for me and I saw that this had to be stopped. I mean, Bill's going to have that exact thought in a second. We'll see how it goes. Another solution that doesn't solve things is fear of consequences, right? Remember, we talked earlier, Bill loves money, right? Bill loves money like Taylor Swift loves money. And that's a lot, right? I love to say this as a huge Taylor Swift fan. And he has an opportunity here to become a really rich guy, right? And he signed a contract with his business partner, as I have been reliably informed, that he would stay away from alcohol completely. But he has every reason to stay sober in the world. And he really means to. He's going to become a rich guy. He's going to be back to his sumptuous apartment, all the good stuff that he wants, right? But he can't do it, right? His mind doesn't work in the ordinary way when it comes to this subject. So just having sufficiently good reasons to stop is also not a cure for alcoholism or addiction. It may alert us to the need for a solution, but sufficiently good reasons to stop are not a solution. No matter how much you love money or your kids, or how scared you were when they took your house, or how much that last DUI really woke you up, or anything else in the world, no matter this hospital stay, that bad consequence, anything, those things aren't solutions. Not if your mind works like Bill's and mine and the people who wrote this book.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, we're on the last, second to last paragraph on page 5 for anyone who just came in. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not take so much as one drink. I was through forever. But then I had written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business. And so I did. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to my mind. Someone had pushed a drink my way and I had taken it. Was I crazy? Began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seems near being just that, crazy. Keep going. Go ahead, Ian.
You go first on this one. I feel like I've been leading off with all these. I want to hear what you have to say about these paragraphs because they're so rich, and I'll talk after you.
Okay. So well, first of all, I woke up. So Bill, not woke up from a bed. He spiritually woke up for a second, like things that happen to us, when consequences that happen to us, when it causes us to wake up, like Ian was sharing, for a moment. And he comes to the realization that he can't even put alcohol in his system. He can't even have that in his system, or he will continue to drink. He's lost all ability to control, which in reality we never have control. But there's no fight. Where had been his resolve? Where had been his, talking about all before this in the past of the chapter, talking about, how he was going to put all of his emphasis on finances and all of his emphasis on his work. Well, then he says, where was that resolve? Like he knew that he was burning his life down. The house was taken, by the mortgage person. There was people dying, and he still couldn't meet that high resolve. He simply didn't even know. It hadn't even come to his mind. So how many times, if you can think to yourself, have you ever, said, tonight, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink anything. I'll be the sober driver. And then all of a sudden I get to somewhere and I change my mind, quote unquote. I change my mind to start drinking, right? And when I say quote, quote, I don't mean we really change our mind. We don't change our minds. That's not how it is. There's, we have a physical reaction and a mental reaction to alcohol. We have a mind that tells us, oh, it's okay if you just have that one drink. Yeah, go to the bar. You'll be okay. Wah, 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 right? In my ear. And I think, oh, I've changed my mind tonight. I'm not going to be the sober driver. You will. And I'm just going to have one drink. Well, almost every time I'm going to re-say that, it ends up in a disaster. And this goes for any substance for me. And even today, with food or anything like that, I'm going to take this diet and I'm going to be strong and I'm going to work out. I'm going to do all those things. It doesn't really happen if I don't involve my higher power. If my higher power isn't helping me along this way, I usually go back within a day.
100%, right? Yeah, I totally identify with that. It's one of the reasons these two paragraphs together are like so important, right? Because I meet a lot of people who are currently in the middle of these paragraphs, right? They have woken up, they've realized this has to be stopped. They have sincerely decided to stop, right? And that's the thing, is we are sincere when we say this stuff. Now, sometimes we're not, but there are times when we say it, and increasingly as time went on, I think for me, I was increasingly sincere when I said, look, I really mean it. I am really done this time, right? And Bill says his wife observed that this time he means business. And he says, I did mean business. And then shortly thereafter, I too would come home drunk. And if you ask me why I picked up that first drink, I could give you a story about why, but it wouldn't really make sense. Not to you, and most importantly, not to me, right? Bill starts to think, this is what I was gesturing at earlier, am I crazy? And the answer is, yeah. On this one subject, yes, you are. You are crazy with respect to the first drink, the first drug, the first acting out behavior. Absolutely, you are crazy. And you will never, ever be able to think yourself out of this crazy, right? Because when your mind doesn't work the right way on the subject of the first drink or the first whatever, right? How can you ever introduce enough rational thinking into a mind that is insane on that subject, right? So I meet a lot of people who are still of the belief that this basically shows us another thing that is not a solution to alcoholism and addiction. That's willpower, right? Deciding I'm not going to drink no matter what. Sometimes I see people and they say, I'm a member of the No Matter What Club. And I'm like, what are you talking about, man? You know how many times I joined, got kicked out of that club? That's meaningless. It's meaningless. So there are some people who can't join that club. I'm one of them. That's called alcoholism. That's called addiction, right? And this paragraph is so important because, yeah, was I crazy? Yeah. Yes, I was too. 100% I was crazy. There is no other way to describe it. That is plain insanity, as we'll see.
Yes. Great. Thank you so much. We're at the bottom of page 5. Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time, I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I would manage better next time. But I might as well get good and drunk then. And I did.
Yep.
The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. The courage to do battle was not there. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was a terrible sense of impending calamity. I hardly dared cross the street, lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it was scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. A morning paper told me the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. So he's talking to, he actually, the thought comes to his mind, or he's wondering, should he kill himself? If we look back just a couple pages, he was being judgmental about the people that were jumping and killing themselves.
Yeah.
And now he's at a point where it's like, just in these 2 pages, he's gone, like, it's gone fast. I mean, it looks like fast from here. I don't know the exact timing on it, but he's going down pretty fast. Do you
He
agree?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's doing what I did several times, which is he says, "Okay, that didn't work. I decided to quit drinking, and then I drank again. That's a little unusual, but let's try again." Right? Renewing my resolve, he says, "I tried again." Okay. And this time, a little time passes, right? Because his mind, his insane thoughts concerning the first drink, stay sort of, in remission for a little while. And he starts to think, okay, I got this, right? And then, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, he's just in a cafe to make a telephone call and he starts drinking again. Why? He presents having no idea, and I totally believe him. He has no idea why he started again. And of course, then he triggers the phenomenon of craving. He would get good and drunk then, and he did, right? And then the next morning he wakes up and thinks, I think he says, the horror, right? And
Mhm.
feeling hopeless. Certainly the remorse I can understand. Anybody who's relapsed after even a period of sobriety where they really felt like I've got this, or a period of recovery or abstention where they thought I've got this, can certainly identify with, like, how the hell did I get started again? But he's starting to feel hopeless, right? He's starting to think, maybe I can't do this, right? And of course, that's, it doesn't feel good, but that's good, because it is only with the realization that no, you can't. You, on your own power, no matter how hard you try, how many times you try, do not have this, and you will never have this, right? Not on your human resources, you won't. Until you have that realization, there's little or nothing that can be accomplished. But he's starting to wonder, like, man, am I, like, just a goner on this stuff? And pretty soon he's gonna say that he realizes that, yeah, that he is actually hopeless.
And he can't differentiate the true from the false at this point. Right? He can't differentiate, and so he's in a delusion, believing the lies.
Yeah, not in the critical moments. That's what he's
Mhm.
starting to realize, is that the horror of it is, he's like, you're thinking, or I'm inserting a lot of myself in this, but you're thinking that those moments where you make this decision to get started again,
Mhm.
they don't make sense even the next day. Not really, right? I mean, you can tell yourself some kind of story about what happened, but you start to think, how can I stop? It's like, how do I stop that from happening, right? And you start to realize, like, I don't know, I don't think I can. My mind enters these curious blank spots. And every time I do, I end up getting started again, and it never makes sense later, but I keep doing it over and over. And yeah, in those moments, I cannot differentiate the true from the false, even though I know right now I'm going to have one of those moments again in the future. I don't know how to stop that moment from happening, right? Because when I'm in it, I don't feel crazy, right? When I'm in it, I think that me now is crazy, thinking I couldn't handle my liquor. Of course I can. This time will be different, or whatever it is I think, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. We're gonna read the last paragraph of page 6. Continuing on. All right. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms. For mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were flights from city to country and back. My wife and I sought escape. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag my mattress to the lower floor, lest I suddenly leap. A doctor came in with a heavy sedative. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my insanity, for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking, and I was 40 pounds underweight. All right, take it away, Ian.
Yeah, this is another reference to sanity, right? And he's saying candidly that he's beginning to regard himself as an insane person on this subject, right? And that is a very, very scary thing. And other people are starting to worry the same thing. I had those same thoughts, right? If you've ever wondered, maybe I'm just one of those people who can't recover. No, no, no. That what you're having is the same thought that Bill was thinking, which is like, am I just a crazy person on the subject of drugs, alcohol, acting out behaviors, whatever? Yes, you are a crazy person on those subjects. Yes, 100% you are. But there is a solution, right? Being crazy on those subjects is not like the definition of a person who can't recover. It's a definition of like alcoholism or addiction. Also Bill talks about in this paragraph, this is a minor thing, but like does mention, and Dr. Bob mentions this in his story as well, mentions mixing drug abuse with alcohol abuse, right? So he's talking about abusing gin and sedative together. So like, yeah, even at the very beginning, we had plenty of people who were like mixing and matching different mind altering substances to get themselves all screwed up. And so, don't worry. This is not a book that just works, a solution that just works for people who exclusively abused alcohol. No, not even Bill exclusively abused alcohol. That's not true at all. I don't think most people in this meeting are going to think that that's true, but it is worth noting that Dr. Bob and Bill both talk about drug abuse in their stories. So, sometimes I think the AA people need to loosen up a little bit about that, but who am I to judge? So yeah, that's about what I've got to say about that paragraph. What do you think?
I love how, well, not really I don't like this line, but I mean, he pulled the mattress, he was so scared that he was going to jump out uncontrollably, and that he had to pull his mattress. And I think of the times that I would go to bed like that as well. Like, it was mental and physical torture. To back up a little bit, on the top of page 6, it says the remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next morning are unforgettable. Like, that's inner turmoil. That's what I felt a million times. No, not a million, thousands of times. And I would think, and I would make my resolve to not drink again. And then and despite all, just despite everything else, I drank again. I would drink again. And I believe that you're describing, and the fifth type of alcoholics that Doctor's Opinion talked about, on XXX. It says, then there are types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has on them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people. Like you said, like, are we crazy? Yes. For this part of our life, yes. I mean, we basically like exude insanity, and insanity is doing the same thing over and over without like making a change. Like, there's nothing to stop that. We can't, unless we make a change, then the insanity is the same thing over and over and over.
Right.
So
And just trying harder does not constitute a change. Right.
Yeah, right.
That's not a change. I've been doing that. Right. I've been trying harder. I've been going to more meetings. I've been reading out of the big book. I've done those things like a lot of times. We need something genuinely new. Right. And so
Right.
that's the solution that's on offer. That takes action, of course, but that's
Yes.
trying harder is not a change.
Right. Or saying that we're willing, but not doing the action is not a change. I can say I'm
Right.
willing to until my face is blue. But unless I'm doing the actions, my willingness doesn't go so far. It doesn't go very far. Because I know that's one of the things that is required is openness, willingness, honesty. But it's the true willingness that comes with action, and it's being so so honest, not just honest about what we say and how we feel, but I mean honest with ourselves and what our condition is. And yeah, so and then openness is obviously being open to set aside what we thought would happen, what we thought, what path we thought we were going to take, what works for us, what stories we need to, all that has to be set aside for us to be truly open, to do this program. We're going to stop there. Do you have any concluding thoughts, Ian?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. This was a ton of fun. I really enjoyed going through this material with you. The concluding thought that I would give is that we have basically gone over this. We read about, 6.5 pages, and we've gotten a portrait of the first step of recovery is understanding what alcoholism is or what addiction is and admitting to ourselves that we have that condition. We've got here in this story both of the criteria that we discuss. Bill cannot drink like a normal person, right? When he gets started, it's very hard for him to stop. That is true for him, basically, as far as we can tell, all the way back to that night law course that he almost fails because he's too drunk, right? But when he gets going, he doesn't have a good ability to control it. But then also in the part of the story we were just reading, we see the second diagnostic criterion for alcoholism or addiction, which is when you really want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, right? That no matter what the consequences are going to be, no matter whether you move to Canada or your wife's in-laws house, no matter whether the house is repossessed, you're losing your job, you fear for your health, you fear for your sanity, no matter what, no matter how many times you sincerely resolve to do it, you find you cannot stop and stay stopped. That is what the information for recovery purposes in this first 6.5 pages is really there for, right? And if you identify with that, then I don't care if in every other respect you're completely different from Bill. If you drink like this, and if you fail to stop drinking like this, then you are like this guy. And you are also like me and a lot of other people who have found a real solution. In the second part of Bill's story, he's going to talk about how he discovers what the solution is and what it is and stuff like that. But right now, this is all about figuring out, do I have the classic thing of alcoholism, addiction type stuff? And that's the information you need to know. Are you able to drink or use or act out or whatever like other people with control, right? In moderation? Yes, no. And when you find you really want to stop, can you stop entirely? Yes, no. So that's what I got.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to have you here tonight. I want to ask you one quick question. What's your favorite quote from the big book or line?
Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. Kindly act once in a while isn't enough. It's the first words that my sponsor and I went over together when we started working together. I was a wreck. I was an absolute mess. I could not stay sober for more than a couple of days on my own power. I was dying of untreated alcoholism. And we didn't start off with a description of alcoholism. We would get there. We didn't start off with a description of a solution or a spiritual experience or making right wrongs or anything like that. We started with a quotation from the middle of the chapter on working with others, because he said the deep solution here is taking the solution that you find and offering it to the next person who needs it, right? Working with others, helping others is the foundation stone of the whole new life that we're going to be building here. And I never forgot it. And I still haven't forgotten it. So if there's anybody here who's listening now, or anybody who's listening to this on YouTube later, and you can get in touch with me and you'd like to know about this solution and you'd like to have somebody take you through it, I'd love to do it because I get much more out of it than the new person does. It's kind of a ripoff.
Thank you so much, Ian. It was just so great to have you here tonight. We're going to stop the recording and then open up the room for questions and answers for a couple minutes or for however long it takes.